Hello, Joyful Hermit. It's a very, very windy afternoon. It's beautiful. I had hoped to go out, but I haven't. Um, Instead, I've been thinking about discernment of spirits, again, the bad spirits and the good spirits. And for that, I've sort of been thinking back through uh, times in my life in which I know that I am influenced by bad spirits and often enough didn't recognize it, or if I didn't have the strength of will to combat the bad spirits. Eventually I would, of course, but um, an adult daughter called today and we were talking about it, and she mentioned that she didn't think you could just say it was bad spirits. And we didn't talk long enough for me to explain that yes, it probably is bad spirits. I think the supernatural world is made up of good and bad. And each step we take in life is a step toward heaven or a step toward hell. Each thought we have is a good thought or a bad thought. It would be very difficult to even come up with an example of a purely neutral thought. They're either good or they're bad, or they're over the line just a little. And at one point, my recent spiritual director had said, I think I was sharing with him some of the horrible things that happened during the soup kitchen time, in which even the women who worked at the parochial school during the week and were the kitchen ladies, served the school lunches, they so resented us other parishioners coming in on Saturday night and Sunday and Monday evening to use the same kitchen um, for the poor that we were delivering soup to, that they would padlock up the pans and also then would hide and lock up in drawers other utensils that we needed, knives and things, and soup ladles. Then they also started locking their refrigerator. And to these things, we would keep coming up with alternatives, eventually purchasing our own pots, purchasing duplicate of everything, and a group of mostly Protestant friends who were in a club in that town donated so we could buy our own refrigerator. So my former spiritual director said, "Well, you can't just blame all that on the devil." I thought, well, I said it certainly wasn't good spirits in those people doing such ridiculous things, and you know, so yes, I think it is a matter of bad spirits versus good spirits. Now, it is very true, as my daughter mentioned, our free will. How do we act on these bad spirits? Do we even recognize them? And it's very critical, I think, to recognize bad spirits. Um, and I gave the list yesterday of what identifies or comprises evil spirits versus good spirits, and how we feel and how we think as a result. Another person had called yesterday and has had a years-long animosity toward her mother and calls her mother by the mother's first name with sarcastic tone. Well, that's bad spirit, but the person is acting on it. And if that mother died today, this person is not going to be any happier with her own life. Not really. Maybe initially we'll feel, my enemy, my mother is gone. But, oh, it's not going to change all the other aspects of that person's life. And that has become a habitual acting upon bad spirit. It's like bad breath. If somebody doesn't tell us or sort of recoil, or we don't and realize, oh, we've got bad breath, at least if we recognize it, we can't do anything about it, we sort of, walk with our mouths closed or try to react in some way. And then we use mouthwash, or we change our eating habits or whatever might be causing the bad breath. Of course, there are some people who are so used to it or who never recognize it, who just keep blasting other people with their bad breath. Similar to bad spirits. recognize it, and then try to do something about it. As I mentioned before, sometimes the bad spirits are so tricky that we might recognize that they're working on us, but they are so adept that, and especially they tend to attack when we're not feeling well or when we are down and out in some other way, like financially or having rejection, um, having other disappointments, and they tend to pile on with other aspects. And also, they're very good at making us think it's always the other person's fault, or that we see the wrongs in other people. Um, Instead, with recognizing bad spirits, we need to not only recognize them in ourselves, but recognize that bad spirits work on other people. Now, I have complained here about many things, but one example is I complained that when I was in need of a word of consolation and advice on March 5th this year, after my neck injury, I didn't hear a word from my former spiritual director. And then, 3 weeks later, when I had had the vision of Jesus and the message that he was going to be guiding me, and I emailed my spiritual director's secretary to formally conclude the spiritual direction relationship within 5 minutes. I had this email back. Oh, he just said he could meet with you May 8th. Well, that wasn't going to help me. I already, needed help March 5th, not May 8th. We both might be dead by then. And in the meantime, Jesus came to save. So, however, rather than my picking on my former spiritual director, as I was tending to do, thinking, well, he wasn't very kind, or if you're too busy to be nice, you're too busy, making statements like that. Instead, now I realize, well, he has bad spirits working on him too. And especially people who would say, oh, well, you can't blame the devil on bad things. Well, who else is it, who instigates the bad? I'm not saying that the devil acts on the bad, but the devil is right there instigating and planting these little bad spirit seeds. So it's up to us whether we are going to recognize from whence the source, and then the next step, try to do something about it. And I mentioned the other day that sometimes we can't even really actively do anything about it. We may not be able to stop crying for an afternoon or a day or feeling down. Like I had to do Sunday, I just finally had to get into bed for 2 extended periods of time because I couldn't do all the things that I had in my head planned up, thinking, well, next time I have a desolation, I'm going to do this or that. Well, sometimes the desolation hits you physically, and the devil knows when you're going to be in pain, and the devil's very, very bright. He was an angel of dark, but he's highly intelligent, and God allows the temptations of these bad spirits so that we learn. We are supposed to be learning. A young woman emailed yesterday. She had had horrible, practically murderous thoughts towards her parents and some other relatives. And she felt helpless to be able to help her younger siblings who, from time to time, are mistreated. Well, yes, it is wrong. And the parents and some of these relatives are being besieged by bad spirits, aren't always evidently wise to the fact that it's bad spirits getting them, planting these seeds, and they aren't using the free will that we are given by God to choose good. So, and then on top of everything, besides the bad spirits putting all these memories and worries and upsets into this young woman's mind, and she did recognize that her hormones might be acting up too, and why she was so upset, because she is expecting a child. She's married and expecting. But also then she was starting to get down on herself. How horrible of me to have these murderous thoughts and to be so upset and to be judging and etc., etc. Well, yes, she was judging. We are called to judge. Even in yesterday's Old Testament reading for the daily Mass, or, the Office of Readings, was, I think, from Leviticus, and it mentioned how we must judge rightly. Yes, we're supposed to use our heads. Judging is a very good and wise tool to have. I'm not talking about making judgments that are negative, but to judge, to discern. That's exactly what we're talking about now. Discernment of spirits. Judging whether it's good or bad, and then judging if we can do something and what it is we can do. Often enough, all we can do is pray, or ask others to pray for us, or to endure. Sometimes all we can do is endure and get through, and then the next hour, the next day, the next week will be better. But yes, on top of everything else with this young woman, the dark spirits were encouraging her then to chastise herself horribly and feel guilty for the thoughts that she was having. That wasn't doing any good. Well, I also recommended smile. Even if you force yourself to smile. The first priest, God bless him, had issues with me sooner than later, and it seems like I tend to sometimes bring the devil out in people if the devil's hovering around. But anyway, I had started various programs that were good, and he felt threatened and even expressed himself in that mode to me. But one time he outright lost his temper and said that I was nothing but a piranha, and that I went around, I didn't smile, I was always made a face to look like, oh. And of course he had me in tears and said to people run the other way when they would see me coming, because I would ask them once again, to maybe be a prayer partner for one of the children or something. I'd ask them something horrible like that to participate in some good program, or ask them if they wanted to be included in the soup kitchen. Well, friends assured me that yes, I did smile quite a bit despite my pain, and that what I was asking people or offered was all very good, and many, many people loved being asked, because too often no one asked them to do anything. They weren't the hoo-hoos. So I always loved asking the unaween, the little lambs, to join in, because no one else ever asked them to do anything. So anyway, I looked up piranha, because I thought, well, what's a piranha? That's one thing I do to fight the bad spirits. I do research on the stuff. If I'm told something, I want to find out, well, am I not smiling? Am I a piranha? So I researched piranha and found out that they're most beautiful rainbow-colored fish, and they have like a perpetual smile. And they also have large teeth like mine. I couldn't believe it. It was like, payday for me. And they were smiley fish, and they really don't attack humans unless they absolutely have nothing else to eat and they are provoked. So they're actually very nice fish, and usually are in schools, but when they're alone and are hungry, yes, they have to eat what they find. And if it's some nasty human prodding them or irritating them, yes, they take a little bite with their big smiley faces. So also, I researched on smiles. And smiling is one of the best things we can do against the dark spirits, because even if we force a smile, like I did this morning when I was lying in bed with an ice pack around the base of my throbbing head from my neck injury still, I started to force myself to smile, because I remembered that research that said even a forced smile will release endorphins that will give the body and the mind a sense of well-being. And I also was smiling because I was having some of these memories of situations that weren't the most pleasant. Bad spirits were operating in other people to try to get me down and to get me to react and to feed right into the bad spirit syndrome. So I didn't. I smiled. God bless His real presence in you. Don't forget to smile if you can do nothing else.